everyone, it's Margaret Manning here, and welcome to 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. Now, my guest today is Pam Krueger. Pam is an investing and financial expert. She is a TV personality and an author. She has an online tool called Wealth Ramp, which connects consumers to fiduciary advisors. And she also is a co-host of the PBS show Money Track. So it's great to have you here, Pam. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Margaret. Great to be here.
Okay, so let's get going with a topic on retirement that I know is of importance to our community. Now, a lot of our women have had really wonderful careers. I mean, they've been working for years and, they've been putting religiously into their 401K and their, since maybe their company doesn't have a pension program, they've got this IRA or this IRA. What do they do with that after they retire? Like, what happens to it?
So basically, when you're getting ready to retire, Margaret, and you've been working for probably not just one company, by the way. Most of us these days, we change companies about every 7 years on average. So we collect, almost like baggage.
That's true.
We collect these 401k plans along the way. So it may be just one that you've been with one company for X amount of years. You've been contributing. Your money is sitting in there. Hopefully, your employer also provided some matching contributions so that you have your money, you have your employer's contributions, and you have all those earnings because the money's been invested, hopefully, in a really diversified portfolio.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're ready to say, okay, I'm ready to have my last day of work. What do I do? So prior, if you can do it before, ideally, starting to think about this maybe 6 months or maybe even 9 months before, because usually when you're going to retire, you almost plan it.
You set a date.
You kind of set that date. You set the clock.
Mark the calendar.
Exactly.
Book the trip.
It's really at that point that you want to know your options. And the options are pretty straightforward. And really, there's only one best option. Even if your company or companies will let you continue to keep your 401k money at that company, it's best to just take the money and do what's called a rollover into an individual retirement account. So you're coming out of a 401k or a 403b. Most people don't have pensions. That's a different story.
Okay.
A pension is where the company is going to pay you for the rest of your life, either a lump sum or some sort of a stream of income. Right. But we're talking about the money that you've contributed and you've saved. So now at that point in time, what you want to do is a rollover. Okay. And it's really easy to do. And what you want to do is...
Easy for you, Pam.
Just to remember the concept that you're rolling over and you're taking all these little nest eggs, or maybe it's one nest egg. And now it's time to roll that nest egg, into your own individual retirement account. Okay. And there's a right way to do that. And I'm not going to get too far into the weeds, but there's a right way to do it. And there's a definite wrong way to do it. The company will ask you, the employer will ask you, do you want me to write you a check? Hey, Margaret, here's your check for $300,000. Here you go. And your answer is, no, don't write me the check. Because if you touch that check, and this is what I want you to remember, you will get dinged. There'll be a 20% mandatory withdrawal right there. Okay. And you then start the clock ticking that you only have 60 days to take that check and deposit it into a brand new individual retirement account that you set up at a Fidelity or a Schwab or a bank.
Okay. So just to clarify, Pam, if you take that money, that $300,000, because that would be so tempting, right? To take the check. If you take that check, whether you put it in the next day into a Fidelity or some other company's account, or whether you wait 6 weeks, you're still going to get dinged 20%?
That's right.
Okay. Wow.
So
all right.
not
Good to know.
the check.
Do not take a check.
There's only conditions of absolute. There's really no condition, because what you're going to do instead of taking the check from the employer is you say, no, don't write me the check to me, or I'm on the hook for that 20%. Mm-hmm. Instead, what you want to do is you want to ask them to do what's called a trustee to trustee transfer. So what you want to do is you already have decided in advance if you want to use Schwab, Fidelity, TD, Scottrade. I recommend a discount broker, a very well-known discount broker, so you can save on fees, a Vanguard, something like that. We all know those names. They're household names.
Right.
And they tend to be the lowest cost.
Okay.
And they all have individual retirement accounts. All an IRA is it's just a basket that's labeled individual retirement account for tax purposes. And that account is its own account. And that's all it is. It's like an envelope. It's like you're putting them in that particular envelope.
Okay.
So when you roll that money over and do it as a direct transfer or a trustee to trustee transfer, then you're avoiding all the hassles. You have no 60-day issue, and they'll do it immediately. You do want to follow up on it. You want to make sure that your employer who's executing this transaction is doing it in a timely fashion. Right. You want to have that Fidelity representative telling you.
Okay.
When this happens.
Okay. So Pam, I think the important thing here to say is that you may not surprise you that your company may have their own processes and ways of doing things, and they don't have your best interests at heart once you're leaving the company. Even if you've been best of friends for 30 years, they don't have to manage your money any longer. So, I think it's really good, like you've just suggested, to be aware of that option. It's important.
We want to avoid that feeling of leaning on and relying on anybody.
Exactly.
Because now you've been relying on your company, thinking that they're looking out for your best interest, and hopefully they have, in the sense that they've been contributing their own matching contribution, at least 50 cents on every dollar, up to say 6% of your income. Let's say that's a nice gift.
Wonderful, yeah.
The downside to 401ks at companies versus an individual retirement account that you are in charge of investing yourself is that the company has your best interest, hopefully, but they also have 401k fees that those investments and the plan administrator, there's like levels of fees that you're paying out of your pocket. Yeah. So the other reason why you want your own individual retirement account, and you want complete control, even though that might sound scary, you want that control because I guarantee you, if you shop around and go to a discount broker or a Vanguard, your fees are going to go way down, which means that's more return in your pocket. So when you're at that juncture of making this decision, the next decision you have to make after you say, okay, which company do I want to use? Do I want to use the discount broker Schwab? Do I want to use Fidelity, or who do I want to use? After you've made that decision, Margaret, that's when you have to decide, am I going to transition this into and transfer this into and open up a traditional individual retirement account, or a Roth? We've all heard of the Roth IRA, or maybe even your 401k was a Roth 401k. So you could, the other option is if you're going to a new position, and your new employer says, hey, we'll take it. That's also a potential option. I would avoid that. So even if that's tempting, because again, we kind of want to rely on the employer to do it for us, your best bet is to get just up to speed on the basics of the different types of individual retirement accounts where you're in charge of the investments. And it sounds scarier than it is. It's really not. There's plenty of options that you can understand that are very easy. And whether or not you want to do this traditional IRA or this Roth IRA.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here, just to clarify. If, for example, you've retired from a company that you've worked for many years, and you do what you say, you take the money and transfer it to an individual retirement account, and then a year later, you get this fantastic offer. I mean, it's like a brand new job, and they're offering you a 401k with that new job for maybe, only even if you're planning to work there for 3 or 5 years. Can you have both an individual retirement account and a 401k? Can you do both those things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I want you to think of it as your old 401k money or from your former employer. Think of it as suitcases filled with money and baggage, because it's from the past. Okay. It's not baggage in a negative way. It's just accumulated little envelopes or bags that you've accumulated, and they need to be kept a little bit separate because they have to go into a certain type of an account, a retirement account. That's either going to be like I said, you're either going to choose a traditional IRA which means that, you've already, you've deferred the taxes and you're going to pay the taxes later, or Roth, which the differences between the two are simply when you have to pay taxes on the earnings.
Okay.
And on the contributions in the case of a typical 401k. Because when you go into either an individual retirement account or a 401k, typically the whole point of it is you don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
The money that goes in before taxes. So all that money that you would have paid to taxes instead gets invested and is working for you over the course of time. Yeah. It's a huge benefit. Yeah. But at the end of the ride, when you're ready to start taking the money out of these either 401ks or this individual account that you've rolled over into a 401k, you have to pay tax at that point. You have to pay piper at some point.
You're going to pay. So when
a Roth IRA, I'll just wrap by saying the Roth IRA, Margaret, is the opposite. So the Roth IRA goes in, you've already paid taxes on your earnings, and it goes in, and then when it comes out, you don't have to pay taxes. So it all depends on when you think you're going to be in a higher tax bracket. If you think you're going to be in a higher tax bracket later, then you definitely want to go with a Roth IRA because you don't have to pay taxes later. Most people think that tax brackets are going to drop when they get to be in their 60s and 70s. So making that assumption, you would say, I want to have the lower tax rate when I'm older. So then you'd opt for the traditional IRA because that's when you'd be paying taxes later, not first.
This is actually very straightforward. I mean, it sounds like, there's a lot to it, but it actually seems like there's really only a couple of decisions to make. And one question I did have, though, is if you put all of your 401k into an IRA, into individual retirement account, could you then decide how to split that up? So I want some to go to bonds, some to go to other things. I mean, once it's in that account, then you can work with a financial advisor to sort out what percentage of it should be in different places?
Certainly. So you can take the 401k and roll it into the individual IRA, and you can even keep, many times you can stay with the same investments. So you don't have to sell.
Well, that's better.
You don't have to sell out of your positions just because you've opened it. All it is it's taking the ownership away from the company.
Okay.
And the individual retirement account says it's now just exactly what it says.
Okay, cool.
It's now labeled individual. So you can do whatever you want with it at that point, which is why the very first thing I say is consider the costs and don't go directly to an insurance company or a full service, quote, end quote, air quotes, brokerage firm. Go instead into a discount brokerage firm and keep those costs down. And then you can decide how you want to really invest the money. And there are so many easy plug and play portfolios. And I mean plug and play. Literally press the button and you're diversified into the right allocation of some stocks, some bonds, and cash. Think of it almost like, seriously, it's this simple. It's chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry investments. You're not trying to do anything exotic. You're not trying to play the ponies. You're not buying options. You're not going into hedge funds.
Yeah.
All you're trying to do is make that money last the rest of your life. All it means is that now, instead of your company doing it for you, you're now running the show with your individual retirement account. And I promise you, the choices you have are plug and play. They're really easy.
It sounds fantastic. Well, I mean, I didn't have a lot. I was one of those bad people that didn't. I used my 401k as I went along for other things. But anyway, this is how life goes. But it's really good to understand it now. And thank you for taking the time to go through all those details. I know it's, there's a lot to it. But I think if people have got questions, they can get back to us and, we can maybe have another conversation about it. But I think you've covered everything. Do we miss anything at all about rolling over your 401k to a Roth or IRA or individual IRA? I think we've covered everything.
The important thing is how you do it, and just make sure you do a trustee to trustee or a direct transfer. Do not take the check. Don't touch the check.
That sounds so
That's all you need to know. And then follow up and make sure that the transfer is actually happening. Because remember, now you have to switch gears. You're in charge.
I like that, though.
You can follow through.
And I think women in our community will relate to this, though. And I mean, I know it seems kind of scary because all of your career you've depended on someone else to hold your hand. And now, being 60 is all about reinventing, the rules. There are no more rules. You are making the rules up.
Margaret, there's a lot to know. And when you Google the topic, it's really overwhelming. But the reality is that the basics of it are very, very 1, 2, 3 simple. It's just, understanding the money is going to be yours, setting up the individual retirement account and opening the account before you make that transition away from work, and knowing where the money is going to go. You don't have to worry about investing it yet. Just get the mechanics of the transfer done so that you're not getting dinged, you're not getting penalized, you're not missing any 60-day windows. So it takes the pressure off to do the trustee to trustee transfer, and your only responsibility to that is to follow up with your brokerage firm, Fidelity, Schwab, discount broker, and make sure that they're tracking and that trustee to trustee transfer is happening in a timely way, and they're responsible. In other words, you're putting them on the line for making sure the transfer happens properly, instead of you taking the check and having to worry about only having 60 days to then open the IRA.
No, I think this has been great advice. Honestly, I think you've really made it clear. And if you have really got any questions, people who are watching, just go back and start the video again, because I think if you listen, we've covered a lot in 15 minutes or so, but it's all there. So just go back and listen to it one more time and absorb what Pam has been saying, because honestly, it's been very, very informative, and I really appreciate your time, Pam. Thank you so much.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you again. Take care. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our 60andMe YouTube channel and also visit our website. We are a strong and dynamic community of women over 60. We're challenging aging stereotypes, and every day we share fascinating stories, interesting questions, and great conversation.